Hi, I'm Mike Reynolds, a senior reporter covering the media industry with S&P Global Market Intelligence, Tech, Media, and Telecom News Team. Welcome to MediaTalk, a podcast hosted by S&P Global, wherein the news and research staff explore issues in the evolving media landscape. Today, Richard Berndes, analyst at S&P Global Kagan Research, is coming to us from London. How you doing, Richard?
Hey, Mike. Looking forward to talking about the Premier League with you.
The Premier League is considered by many soccer football fans to be the best of all leagues around the world. And for those who may not know, Premier League is the NFL of the UK, by far its most popular sport. Our discussion will swing between rights and viewership, prior results, and handicapping the upcoming performance on the pitch. Richard's family is season ticket holders to Tottenham Hotspurs, and he's coached his children at various youth levels. We're also going to get an assist from a couple of special guests, his 16-year-old twin sons, Dexter and Seb. They will weigh in on various things 2024-25 Premier League, which kicks off August 16th with Manchester United versus Fulham. The opening week concludes with Leicester City against your guys' team, Tottenham. Let's kick things off with media rights. 425 season, Richard, is the last of the Premier League's current deal?
Yes, Mark, that's right. It's a 3-year deal that was rolled over after COVID, and it's worth approximately £4.9 billion. Media rights has been the driving force behind the growth of Premier League, and as I say, it's entered the last year of its current deal. The new deal, which starts next year, it will be between Sky and TNT Sports, whereas the previous deal was between Sky, BT Sport, and also Amazon.
Is the new one a longer pack? Traditionally, I think the deals have run for 3 years. I think this one is a bit longer. Or am I mistaken?
No, you're right, Mike. Traditionally, the Premier League, they've always been 3-year deals, and the Premier League have been very clever in the way they've used these 3-year packages to try and bring in new bidders into the market, and that's driven the phenomenal growth of the revenue that the Premier League generates. In previous years, they've brought ESPN into the Premier League. They've also been Setanta Sports, but traditionally Sky has been the sort of the dominant force in the Premier League, and BT Sport, which is now TNT Sport, have been basically the ones driving it. But yeah, it's been a marketing tool where they can drive up the revenue. But yes, this is a 4-year deal.
All right. Here in the States, Richard, NBCU's now been in place for quite some time. Going back a ways, brief history here. ESPN held Premier League rights from 96 through 98. Then Fox Sports stepped in from 98 through 2008. In 2009 through 13, Fox and ESPN had the rights together. NBC's been on board with the Premier League since the 2013-14 season. Its initial contract was for a combined $250 million over 3 campaigns, or $83.3 million apiece. Its next contract, which extended for 6 seasons, went up to about $183.3 million for each season. And under its current deal, which extends for 6 seasons from 2022-23 to the 27-28 campaign, NBC was paying about $2.7 billion. $450 million per year. Premier League commands a higher average annual rights than the NHL has with individual rights holders, ESPN and the Warner Brothers Discovery. I'm going to go back to you, Richard, now and talk about what's been Premier League viewership over the course, how have things been mapping out?
Yeah, it's been good. Sky can be very secretive about what their viewing figures are, but some of the biggest figures in recent years have been just over the 4 million mark. Last season, the 22-23 season, average viewing was 3.1 million a game, which is 12% up year on year. And more than 75% of the UK population watched at least one Premier League game during that season. The start of the current season, Sky reported a 40% increase in viewing year on year, with 8 million people watching the 5 games they showed on the opening weekend. And there's also a 50% increase in women watching the Premier League.
All right. Here in the States, we'll talk about the NFL a bit here. Dallas Cowboys, the 2-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, the Green Bay Packers, the San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles are the most popular squads. What teams get people to watch the Premier League most in the UK, Richard?
It's traditionally dominated what's called the Big Six over here in the UK. So that's the 2 Manchester clubs, Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, and 3 clubs from London, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham Hotspur. These are usually top of the table clashes that are in the peak slot on Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. And they can get close to 4.5 to 5 million people for one of the big games towards the end of the season.
The numbers are not quite that high in the States here, but NBCU for the last season, the 23-24 campaign, had its best ever with the Premier League. It averaged, it had a total audience delivery of about 546,000 viewers per match window. That was across NBC, Cable Network USA, and its streaming service Peacock. Last year's performance beat the 22-23 season by 4%. So things are going in the right direction here for sure. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is this is a matter of some debate, and I hope you can weigh in on this, Richard, as well. The Premier League, at least in 23, may have surpassed the Liga MX, which is the top flight circuit in Mexico, and the rights have long been held by Televisa Univision. I think they surpassed it in 23. I'm not sure if it held up for the 24 part. Your thoughts on the Premier League's growth, Richard, in the States?
To be honest with you, Mike, I'm not surprised. The Premier League is this behemoth of a sport that's growing around the world. We talked about media rights a little bit at the top of the program, and the overseas media rights for the Premier League are actually much bigger than the domestic market. So that overseas market is very important to the Premier League. So you can see why they're invested in it. But I think in the US 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't find someone who could name their favorite Premier League team. Probably now, a lot more people would say, I have a favorite Premier League team in the US. And that's reflected in the growth in the viewing, I think.
Yeah, I think that if you went back a while ago, it was maybe Man U and maybe nothing else. Sorry, Tottenham fans. Anyway, here in the States, something that's also helping NBCU's cause is Peacock. It was involved for its fourth full season last year and exceeded 1 million viewers for the first time with an average minute audience of 1.15 million for the Arsenal-Liverpool match. About a month later, March 5th, Peacock topped the million mark again with 1.10 million viewers for the Manchester Derby. All told, the 8 Peacock exclusive matches, 800,000 viewers, quadrupling the prior season's total. And overall, Peacock streamed about 28% more live minutes of Premier League matches this last season. So the streaming is becoming a big boost here in the States for NBC. Richard, is that the case at all over in the UK? Is streaming a factor for the Premier League?
It's not actually, Mike. To be honest with you, all the games are on pay TV with Sky or TNT Sport. The BBC does have free-to-air highlights on a Saturday evening. The latest deal that we've just discussed has 270 games out of 280 games will be live on television. So I wonder how many more games will be live in the next deal. But in terms of your streaming point, I think it was interesting in the last deal how the Premier League courted Amazon to get involved with the Premier League. It was done very cleverly to get them engaged, and where they positioned their games in terms of off the back of Black Friday and the Christmas sales period was, I think, vital for Amazon in terms of getting a handle on live sport viewing data.
Summer tour here in the States. I think there are 9 Premier League clubs that are having matches here in the U.S., including some of the big ones, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Man U. It's obviously makes money for the clubs and the leagues, and through the tickets and media rights sales, it also builds the fandom here in the States. NBCU sports executive John Miller has been lobbying to get some regular season Premier matches on this side of the pond. Richard, do you think that's going to happen? What's going on that front?
It seems to be there's an inevitable move to this happening. When Richard Masters, the CEO of the Premier League, was asked about this, he said it's not in our current plans. But as you sort of rightly said, the New Jersey Governor, Phil Murphy, has gone on record saying he would die to have a Premier League game in the US. And the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has come out saying he's very much in favour of the Premier League played in the USA, citing the success of the NFL in London. And you can see it makes sense from a marketing point of view. After all, the NFL, which is played at the Spurs Stadium, is huge here in the UK and also in Germany. But as a fan, if I'm missing a key game of the season because it has to play in York, I'm saying, what about my ticket? What about my experience?
They're not paying for you to fly to East Rutherford, New Jersey to watch the match?
Oh, that would be very nice, especially if I'm in business class.
All right. Let's switch over for a moment to the women's game. You and I, Richard, were part of a team that authored a 2-part thought leadership report entitled Women's Sports, Turning Moments into Movements. For that piece, you wrote a lot about women's soccer. Richard, if you could talk about the Women's Premier League, its viewership, is there a new rights deal on the horizon there?
The latest deal that the WSL had with Sky and the BBC was extended into this coming season on the same terms. I get the sense with the WSL that they're looking at its position to see how strong it is and are then assessing the market, solidifying its position and looking for the right media partners. And I think free-to-air of the BBC is going to be really important to help the women's games grow. But you never know. You could see a streamer stepping into the women's soccer market and maybe trying to dominate the genre. Now, that could be an interesting development.
So we'll get some of that streaming action across the pond there. Back to the Premier League. Manchester City has won 4 consecutive Premier League championships. I know you guys are not so happy about that. But if I'm doing this correctly, that's the most in a row in the Premier League, which began in 1992. And I'm pretty sure that's a feat That wasn't accomplished by any of the top teams in Premier League predecessors either. Should Man City win again, the Blues would match the 5-year championship runs of the New York Yankees in the Major League Baseball from 1949 through 53, and the NHL's Montreal Canadiens from 1956 through 1960. Amazingly, they would still have a lot of work to do to catch up on the Bill Russell-led Boston Celtics, which won 8 NBA titles in a row from 1959 through 66. Richard, will Man City don its 5th consecutive Premier League crown this year?
To be honest, Mike, I can't see many people challenging Manchester City. They have very deep pockets and they have a fantastic squad. I think Arsenal will be up there challenging them again. Liverpool have changed their manager, so they possibly might have a wobble. Manchester United are in a little bit of a chaotic situation with their ownership, but Manchester City are very strong, and I really can't see many getting past them at the end of this season.
All right, I'm going to say, since I like Arsenal, which placed second to Manchester City last year, it's only 2 points off the top of the table. So I'm rooting for the Gunners to make up that ground and dethrone the Man City. But I'm going to defer on handicapping the rest of the league, and we're going to bring in Richard's son Dexter to give his views on how he thinks the Premier League will shape up this season. Dexter, what are your thoughts?
I believe that Man City will continue their dominance over the Premier League due to their financial muscle and the highly talented and deep squad strength they have. In Pep Guardiola, they have arguably the greatest manager in the modern game. However, this is the last year of Guardiola's contract and could put a dent in City's unparalleled success. I still see the Big Six will be at the top of the league at the end of the season, but I think Man United are in a mess with their takeover, and Liverpool have changed their manager, so that could have an impact. Also, Chelsea seems to be facing lots of players changes and bad financial decisions.
Yeah, I saw a headline, maybe 12 Chelsea players or could be in a transfer portal. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of changes at Chelsea. They have a very heavy playing squad and they're looking to recycle their players and get some new faces in.
Let's go to the bottom of the table, relegation. It's not a concept that's in play here in the U.S. It's akin, I suppose, if you play really poorly, finish at the bottom of your league. In MLB this year, think the Chicago White Sox, Colorado Rockies, and the Miami Marlins. They're all not doing well. They might get dropped into AAA minor league if relegation's here to state. Is that basically how it works, Richard? And there's also a lot of serious financial ramifications if you drop down.
Absolutely. Manchester City won 200 million in prize money from the Premier League alone. That's not including their sponsorship. And even the relegated teams from last season, including Sheffield United, earned 100 million for just being in one season the Premier League. In the 2022-23 season, the Championship, which is the division below the Premier League, the teams were already winning 22 million in revenue. So you can see the sharp difference in terms of the Premier League and the divisions below. On the upside, obviously, there's the promotion game to the Premier League, which is a playoff that's played at Wembley, and it's known as the £100 million game, the most expensive game in sport. Where literally, by winning that game and getting into the Premier League, you're getting that £100 million in prize money.
There's a lot of pressure there, a lot on the line. Dexter, what's your thoughts about relegation? Who's at the bottom of the table? Who should be very wary that their time in the top league is maybe coming to an end?
I can see that the newly promoted teams like Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich will go straight back down to the Championship. Their squads lack the depth and quality of the existing Premier League teams. They also won't have the financial strength of the current Premier League teams, so will struggle to fund the transfers and the wages of the top players.
All right. We're going to shift away from the Premier League to UEFA's Champions League, the top club circuit in Europe. On June 1, Real Madrid beat German club Borussia Dortmund, extending its record to a 15th Champions League title and 6th in the last 11 season. Richard, which Premier League sides were in the Champions League last year and who's going to make it this time around?
So last year it was Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal and Newcastle were in the Champions League. This year, it's the same two at the front, Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal. But this year, Aston Villa have made it into the Champions League. Aston Villa, quirkily, Tom Hanks' favourite football team.
Okay, all right.
But in terms of the winners, the Premier League always go deep into this competition and get to the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. I expect City to challenge, but teams like Real Madrid and Bayern Munich always seem to produce the goods in the Champions League. So I'd expect to see Real Madrid up there as well.
All right, now it's Seb's turn. Seb, who do you favor this time around? What Premier League teams are going to make the jump into the Champions League?
I think Man City will win, but Real Madrid have now added Mbappe, so they should be very strong. And they have won it 15 times more than any other club As we all know, they have the generational talent Jude Bellingham and the favourite candidate for the Ballon d'Or, Vinicius Junior. However, Man City will also be a strong team and will have a great chance of winning the Champions League as well. Last season, they went out to Real Madrid on penalties in a match many people thought City should have won. They have added a young American player called Kevin Sullivan, who made his debut in the MLS at just 14 years of age.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow. Guys, we haven't talked a lot about your family's favorite club, Tottenham, yet. Seb, can you kick us off? Assess the Spurs' chances this season.
As a lifelong Spurs fan, I've seen many lows, but also many highs. Unfortunately, I've never witnessed Spurs win a trophy. However, I think the drought is ending very soon. Spurs are in the Europa League and are considered one of the favourites to win. And also, I think we will do well in the best knockout trophy, the FA Cup. With our new manager, Ange Postecoglou, I believe we will be successful in the Champions League where we belong. We need a few signings. I think we need to sign a striker and an attacking midfielder, ideally Ivan Toney and Eze, but these players will not be cheap. Far, we have brought in some exceptional young talent, for example, Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwall. Finally, I think Spurs need to have faith in their youth players. During pre-season, Spurs' main stand-up player has been the 16-year-old Mikey Moore. He also starred in the England Under-17 Euros. This is a player Spurs need to give a big contract to, so no rival team can get their hands on this young gem. Teams like Real Madrid have interest. This gives you an idea of how good Mikey Moore really is.
All right, Richard. Do you see an uptick like Seb does for Tottenham? Is that going to be in the cards this season?
I'm always confident Spurs at the beginning of the season, and it slowly gets punctured. But yeah, we've got some great young talent coming through. We're moving out some of the dead wood, but I agree with Seb. We need a new striker. Richarlison is no Harry Kane, but then again, who is? And I also agree with Des in terms of some quality wide players. I see us getting into the top four, third or fourth, hopefully a good cup run. And I think the Europa League, we could be one of the favourites to win that. And I'm confident we'll go deep into that competition.
Right. There we go, fellas. Expert predictions from one and all, especially yours truly, but more importantly from Dexter, Seb, and Richard Berndes. That concludes this episode of Media Talk. I just want to thank Kagan's Richard Berndes and his twin sons, Dexter and Seb, for talking about and sharing their football acumen about the upcoming Premier League campaign. This is Mike Reynolds. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch up soon on the next edition of Media Talk.